If you're planning to retire in your 50s or early 60s, then what you do with your 401k in those first few years can either save you tens of thousands of dollars or it could quietly cost you the same amount. For many people, the 401k ends up being their single biggest retirement asset, but it's also one of the most misunderstood, especially if you plan to retire early. Because once the paycheck stops, your 401k isn't just a savings account anymore. It now becomes your paycheck, or at least a large portion of your paycheck for most people. And here's the reality. The way that you use your 401k in the first few years of retirement will influence almost everything else, like your taxes, your Medicare premiums, your Social Security strategy, and ultimately how long your money lasts. And although many people are choosing to keep working longer, a growing number who want to retire early find that the decisions that they make today determine how well that works out. And with financial market shifting, longer lifespans, and changing retirement rules, those decisions matter now more than ever. And most of the biggest mistakes that I see don't come from people who didn't save enough. They come from people who saved plenty, but never built a clear strategy for how to use what they've worked so hard to build. It's easy to feel like once you've hit your number that the hard part is over, but the truth is that retirement planning changes the moment the paycheck stops. That's when the questions start. Where do we draw from first? When do we take Social Security? How do we make it all last? I recently met with a couple in their late 50s who had done a great job of saving over the years. And they weren't worried about whether they had enough. They were worried about whether they were doing the right things with what they now had. And once we walked through their plan, we found that their biggest challenge wasn't investment performance. It was timing and coordination. And, maybe you're in the same spot. Maybe you've worked hard. Maybe you've saved diligently. And now the question isn't, did I save enough? It's how do I use what I built wisely? In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 of the biggest 401k mistakes that I see people make when retiring early and what to do instead to retire with clarity and confidence. A quick note before we start. When I say 401k in this video, I'm mainly referring to traditional pre-tax balances since that's where most of the tax planning issues come up. But many people today have both pre-tax and also Roth money inside their 401k. And the key is understanding how each piece fits into your broader withdrawal and tax strategy. The overall goal here is the same, knowing how and when to use what you've built so that you can then retire confidently and keep more of what you have saved. We're going to walk through 5 common mistakes, from how to access your money early to how your 401k can impact taxes, Social Security, and also healthcare down the road. And the first mistake I want to get started here with is overlooking the rule of 55. So if you're thinking about retiring before 59 and a half, this one can make a big difference, and it's often overlooked. Normally if you take money out of your retirement accounts before 59 and a half, there's a 10% early withdrawal penalty. But there's one exception that can help for early retirees. Now, there's some other exceptions, don't get me wrong, but this is the key that we're talking about right here. And it's called the rule of 55. So this can help bridge that gap up until the age of 59 and a half when that 10% penalty goes away. And so here's how it works. If you leave your job in or after the year that you turn 55, the IRS allows you to take withdrawals from the employer's 401k without the early withdrawal penalty. And that can be really helpful if you retire at, let's say, 55, 56, 57, and then you want to use some of that money to cover your living expenses until your other income sources begin. However, this only applies if your 401k plan allows it. Each employer sets their own rules for withdrawals after separation. So you're going to want to make sure that you check with your plan administrator before you retire. And once you roll that money into an IRA, you lose this option completely. IRAs don't qualify for the rule of 55 exception. And a lot of people do roll their 401k into an IRA once they retire, which can give you more control over investments and withdrawals. But just remember, if you plan to use the rule of 55, then have at least the portion that you'll need for those early years in your 401k. And you could always roll over the rest, the money that you won't touch until after 59 and a half, into an IRA if that makes more sense for you based upon your overall plan. Now, let's jump into the second mistake here, and that is missing the low income window between retirement and Social Security. There's a golden window that often pops up, and it's between the time that you stop working and when you start to take Social Security. During those years, your taxable income is at the lowest, and that creates a powerful planning opportunity. If you've ever wondered when to do Roth conversions, this is usually a good time to at least consider possibly doing it. And that again is because your income is low. I mean, let's say that you retire at 60 and you delay taking your Social Security at 67. If you don't have any other income sources, like you don't have a pension or anything else coming in really for the most part, then for 7 years, you get to decide exactly how much income to show. You could intentionally recognize maybe 80,000 or 100,000 of income for the year. And I'm just making these numbers up. Your numbers could be higher than low or lower than that, depending on your situation. But you could then convert some of your money from the 401k over to the Roth and then stay in a lower tax bracket while reducing your future RMDs. And that's the window here where small moves can create big flexibility later on. Think of it like adjusting your sails while the wind is calm. The earlier that you set the right course, the smoother the rest of the journey becomes. I work with a client who retired at 60, and she assumed taxes wouldn't be a big deal for years. But when we mapped out her future RMDs, we saw that her tax bracket would likely jump from 12% up to probably about 22%, not because she was spending more, but simply because her 401k kept growing or would keep growing. By taking advantage of that early retirement window, we were able to shift some of her savings to a Roth while rates were still lower. And it gave her peace of mind knowing that she was in control of her tax picture instead of the IRS. And you can use this time to start controlled withdrawals from your 401k, fill up lower tax brackets intentionally, convert portions of your pre-tax money to a Roth at discounted rates. But if you let that window pass, those accounts continue to grow. And once Social Security and RMDs begin, then your flexibility gets limited. It's one of the only times in life when you truly get to decide how much taxable income to show and how much future tax that you want to avoid. As an example, you might have a pre-tax 401k. You might have a brokerage account, maybe a savings account, and you can decide how much you're going to take from each one. And then based upon that, that will determine what your taxable income is. And then you can make decisions. Okay, maybe I'm going to do some Roth conversions, for instance. And if I convert, this amount, then that'll, if I do that, here's how much I can convert, maybe still stay within a certain tax bracket. So that sort of thing. Now let's move on to mistake number 3, which is starting Social Security too early without coordinating it with your 401k. It's common to think about Social Security and 401k withdrawals separately, but the two are deeply connected. One couple that I work with, and I'll call them Jim and Karen, they plan to start taking their Social Security at 62, and in their case, that could have worked out just fine, but when we look closer, we realized that they had some flexibility. And by using their 401k along with money in their brokerage account to give them the income that they were going to need for a few years, we could then control how much taxable income that they showed each year, enough to qualify for ACA subsidies before Medicare started. So a little bit ago, I was talking about controlling how much taxable income you're showing to maybe do Roth conversions. Now we're talking about doing the same thing, controlling how much income we're showing, but maybe to do qualify for these ACA subsidies. While in their case here with Jim and Karen, while also allowing their Social Security benefits to grow by not taking the Social Security right away. By coordinating their income this way, they had more options. I mean, they could delay benefits to increase their long-term income, to lower their future taxes, and even boost the survivor benefit for the surviving spouse. The point isn't that everyone should delay Social Security. I mean, sometimes it makes perfect sense to take it right away. It's that your timing decisions should fit within the broader context of your overall income plan, tax plan, healthcare plan, all of this, rather than being made in isolation. Now, mistake number 4 is overlooking future RMD planning. Now, the biggest shift that I see when people move from saving to spending is this. You go from trying to grow your money to now trying to use it wisely. And when you retire in your 50s or early 60s, required minimum distributions, or RMDs, can feel like a distant issue. And for many retirees, they really aren't a problem at all. I mean, if your lifestyle spending lines up naturally with what you'll be required to withdraw, then RMDs may simply blend in as a part of your regular income plan. In fact, unless you have or expect to have a very large 401k balance, then oftentimes RMDs won't create major tax issues. But for others, especially those with significant pre-tax savings, those mandatory withdrawals can lead to more taxable income than they actually need, which could affect things like your tax bracket, Medicare premiums, or how much of your Social Security ends up being subject to tax. And if you have a Roth 401k money, that's even better news, because those accounts are no longer subject to RMDs. The key point isn't to fear RMDs. It's to understand how they fit into the context of your overall plan. I mean, think of RMDs as just one line on your tax return that you want to understand ahead of time. And for some, it's a small line. For others, it's a big one. Either way, planning early means you get to decide how much control that you'll have later on. Now, mistake number 5 is triggering higher Medicare premiums through large 401k withdrawals. Now, most people factor in healthcare costs when planning for retirement, but few people realize that their income plays a major role in what they'll actually pay for Medicare. In plain English, the more income that you show on paper, the more you pay for the same exact Medicare coverage. Medicare premiums are based on your income, and yes, that includes withdrawals from your 401k or IRA. And if your income crosses certain thresholds, then you'll pay something called an IRMA surcharge, which is short for income-related monthly adjustment amount. In 2025, those surcharges start around $103,000 of income for individuals and $206,000 for couples. And they're cliff-based. If you go even $1 over the line, then your premiums will jump to the next tier. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Medicare looks at your income from 2 years earlier. So imagine taking maybe a one-time, maybe it's a $25,000 or $50,000 withdrawal from your 401k at age 63 because you want to buy a car, you want to make some home improvements or something like that. And then at 65, that decision could show up later as higher Medicare premiums if that pushed you over that bracket to the next bracket. It's not about avoiding withdrawals altogether. It's just about timing them intentionally so that you're not blindsided either. The flip side of this is that when we plan ahead, we can use those early withdrawals before 63 to do Roth conversions or pay off a mortgage or cover big expenses and keep premiums lower later on. And if you're retiring before 65, then thoughtful withdrawal planning can also help you qualify for those valuable ACA premium credits that we mentioned earlier, even before Medicare begins. Now, here's what to do instead. The 401k it's still one of the most powerful tools for building wealth. But once you retire, the goal shifts. It's not just about growing your balance anymore. It's about how to use it wisely. The right approach involves taking early control of your income strategy before the IRS starts dictating it, and then using the early retirement window to minimize your future RMDs and Medicare costs, and coordinating your Social Security with your withdrawal plan, not in isolation, and building flexibility across pre-tax, Roth, and brokerage accounts so that you can adapt each and every year down the road. And that flexibility is what allows you to adjust as tax laws, markets, and life circumstances change over time. And when people get this structure in place, they often tell me that they finally feel free to spend the retirement that they worked so hard to build without guilt or second guessing. And a lot of retirement advice, focuses on products or one size fits all rules. But in reality, it's the coordination of everything, not the complexity. That's what really makes the big difference, I see. Retiring early isn't just about having enough saved. It's about creating a plan that makes your money work efficiently. The way you use your 401k in those first few years can save you tens of thousands in taxes and also possibly in healthcare costs, or it could quietly cost you the same amount if it's not coordinated properly. You've worked too hard to let taxes and timing decisions take away from what you built. With the right plan, you can enjoy more freedom, more confidence, and fewer surprises, because retirement isn't just about the numbers, it's about time. The time to travel, the time to go see family, to actually live the life that you've been saving for all of these years. And the right plan can simply help you spend that time with peace of mind. Now, if you're not sure where to start, that's okay. That's exactly what I help people do in our first conversation. We'll look at where you stand today, what options you have, and whether it makes sense to take that next step. If you'd like to talk through how these strategies could apply to your own situation, I've added a link below where you could schedule a free strategy call with me. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.